Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos Podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartigon, ZP002. Back with me on the show, my co-host, Jamie Franks. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, buddy. Good to be here.
Awesome, man. Awesome. It's I wear the glasses, right? These are readers. And so as the intro was rolling here, I was looking at the screen. I was like, man, it's a little blurry. And then I put my glasses on. I'm like, man, it's still a little blurry. So it's like these readers, I'm like in the in-between stage of distance here. I can see your face a lot clearer, but then you get that whole reflection thing. So
Sorry about that.
I'll tell you what, man, this getting old shit's for the birds, but
Dude,
here we are.
I think I must be going through some sort of physical or physiological change or something, because I swear to God, like some days, what was it? Day before yesterday, I did an 8-mile hike, and like I could see everything like perfectly clear, perfectly vivid, like, no issues with my eyesight at all. Everything was good. Everything was fine. And then it was like yesterday at work, like just everything looked blurry, and I'm like, fuck, I think I need glasses. And then like today it's like I'm fine again. So I don't know what's going on. But yes, this getting old shit is getting old.
It is. But folks, listen, welcome back to the show today. I guess we got a little bit to talk about before we get into what we're talking about today. And that is where you are seeing this episode, if you are watching this episode. Over the past probably week, and I don't know when this show is going to air versus when it's recorded, but over the past week or so, there has been a change on where you will be able to find the video portion of this podcast. So if you are listening, obviously you know that we publish our shows every Thursdays on Apple and Spotify. And that's done through the Firearms Radio Network and then just normal stuff on Spotify. But we publish those shows in the audio form there. And then the video form comes out afterwards on the YouTube channel. Now, in the past, it has been on the regular ZERT Nation YouTube channel. But over the last couple of weeks, we are trying an experiment to see if we are A, shadow banned, and B, there's a better spot for our podcast. So we do now have a separate channel for the Coffee and Chaos podcast. And if you go over to YouTube and you type ZERT Coffee and Chaos, you will find the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast channel. It will be the different logo, not the logo that you see here in the screen, but it'll be the artist logo, if you will, or the updated logo that we have yet to actually incorporate into this show. But I do like it. It's just a little bit different. So we will see if that works. We're going to try and see if that channel can grow.
And 2025 is definitely starting off very interesting. Obviously there's all these weather events and disaster events, and we just had the presidential election. So there's all this political stuff going on, which all the political stuff is bleeding into social media stuff. We've had Zuckerberg coming out, and basically the way I interpret all this stuff with Zuckerberg is the guy that's been telling us for the last 8 years that he wasn't censoring anything is coming out and saying he's going to stop censoring everything.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I want to circle back to that when you get done with your point, if you don't mind.
Well, yes, but I know on my social media that for the shooting instruction company that I have out here in San Diego, we dealt with getting shadow banned and had to like start a whole new we had to create an entire new Instagram account that wasn't shadow banned, and I recently read and watched a bunch of stuff about that, and how if 5 years ago you posted some post or some video and you used some hashtag that had been flagged, and they basically shadow ban your, like, there's really no way to undo that except going back and eliminating all that content. But a person like me, I don't know what that is. And then like I see you and I talked about this on the phone, like a bunch of companies in the tactical sphere and stuff, like in the firearms and tactical industries, are like deciding in 2025 they've just decided to go out of business or whatever. So a lot of things
Yeah.
are changing. And then, like, again, as it pertains to social media, on my YouTube channel the other day, I posted what I thought was a pretty benign video of just a basic, super fundamental informational video about shotgun stuff. It was a 3-minute long video. It was pretty basic information, and within 48 hours or something like that, it had like over 4,000 views. And so so things are changing, and 2025 is starting off kind of weird and very interesting.
So before I go back to circle that point, I got to tell you, man, and as you were talking there, I looked up, and we always have a third co-host on this show. Just she doesn't always make an appearance, but she decided to make an appearance today, and she is not happy that I caught her in the middle of it. She's like, "What in the hell are you doing?" But anyway, that's a picture of Stella. For those of you that are just listening, my dog, she is sitting right behind the camera setup here. And as I'm looking at Jamie, I look over and see her, and she's just got this side eye looking at me. And I'll tell you, dogs are funny. But going back to the Zuckerberg interview, and you and I think I talked to Brett about it, because I was like, "Oh, dude, you're gonna be golden again," because obviously he does this social media marketing. And as I hear more and more about it, and I see more and more videos, like I just want to be clear. All he said is that they're removing the third-party fact checkers. I guarantee you, if I go to Facebook and try and take out an ad that says, "Go buy a gun here," they will shut the shit down as fast as I can put it up. So while I applaud him for not having a fact checker anymore, you're not really doing shit. Great. Thanks, dude. You brought in third-party
That's what I
fact
said,
checkers.
though. Other than you're
Right.
basically in a backhanded way admitting that you've been censoring all this stuff all along that you claimed that you weren't. But
Right. Like, I mean, I'm so glad that you decided to remove fact checkers after Biden put up a post talking about how he's leaving the American economy in the best it's ever been. Smart move. I mean, let's fact check the shit out of that.
This is way off topics, kind
Yes,
of,
it
but
is.
did you see the thing where in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, this is not even up for debate, but like all these wildfires that have turned into massive structure fires and stuff in California, like pretty much 99% of that can have a direct line drawn back to Gavin Newsom. And did you see the thing where Gavin Newsom reached out to the White House requesting that the Biden administration do whatever it is they do to label all, like, anybody that says that Gavin Newsom is responsible for these fires, that he wants that labeled as misinformation?
Wow. I mean,
I saw that yesterday.
Some are talking about him being the candidate in 2028. And unfortunately, there will be way too much time that passes between now and 2028 for anybody to realize this. The shit that's happening in California is horrible.
It's criminal.
It is criminal. I will tell you that I quickly scroll or just throw my phone when I start seeing celebrities talking about how devastated they are as they are doing it from their fourth house somewhere else. It's like, okay, whatever, but like, let's focus less on you paid actor, and let's focus on the real people here that lost all of their shit.
Well, I'm from North Carolina. I was born and raised in North Carolina, and back in the fall, North Carolina had that big natural disaster with all the flooding and everything.
Yep.
And the government response wasn't great, which this kind of does tie into our episodes. Anybody that expects otherwise, like, you need to calibrate your expectation, because government response to anything is bad. Government ruins everything they touch. Government has the opposite of the Midas touch. Like, everything Midas touched turned to gold. Everything that the government puts their hands on turns to shit. So, like, I've always said, just for example, not to get us even further off topic, but like on the subject of abortion, each person can think whatever they want to think about whether abortion is right or wrong, or it should be legal or it should be illegal. But the one thing that everybody should agree on is that the government shouldn't touch it, because the government is going to mess it up. Like, whichever side you're on, if you put the government in charge of it, they're going to mess it up. And so back to the thing in Western North Carolina, my family back home, they were just kind of a little bit aggravated and disappointed and a little bit angry, I think, because the LA wildfires or the LA fires are getting all this attention in the media, and they're
Oh
saying
yeah.
like the disaster in Western North Carolina basically got zero media coverage, and all of those people in Western North Carolina are still living outdoors and everything, and what's the deal with that? Why, is it because all these people in LA are the rich and famous and powerful? And I said, I don't think that's true. I think the situation in Western North Carolina was terrible, and the situation in Los Angeles is terrible. They both started as natural disasters. I said, but the government of North Carolina didn't create that disaster. And I said, but it's basically coming to light now that the California government did create this situation in LA, because wildfires happen, but number one, on this scale is preventable. Number two, you can have infrastructure in place to when one does happen, it gets if you can't prevent it, it's going to get extinguished quickly. And then if it doesn't get extinguished quickly enough, you can contain it and then do, FEMA and emergency management on the backside. But
Right.
all of those levels have been exposed as complete failures. And that's why this is getting all the attention that Western North Carolina didn't get. I don't think it has to do with anything in the income levels, but
yeah, and listening to you talk about this, we could probably make the show directly about this whole entire situation, because it's so strange. I mean, we're 12 minutes into it, and we've gone over just some admin stuff, and we haven't even gotten, this show follows our initial Go Bag show, and I believe I don't remember at the time of that recording, had these fires already started? Had they already broke out? Okay, so they had already broke out. So it's obviously it's a very good topic that kind of ties into it. The difference between the fires and the flooding in North Carolina is that fire started at point A, and I'm sure it spread pretty fast, but that it's coming, right?
Yeah.
Like you can try to get out of the way. In some of these other natural disasters like that flooding, I don't know that you can. I don't know how fast it escalates into a point of no return, basically, or
yeah,
you
that's what I
can't.
mean. Like there's nothing that any government could have done or any amount of money that could have diverted those floodwaters and changed it. But now with the situation in Los Angeles, more and more and more and more, like almost on a daily or hourly basis, there's all these governmental failures that are directly making this worse. That
Yeah.
had the government made this decision instead of that one, this would be
Yeah.
better, and there would be water, and there would be money, and there would be people, and there would be fire trucks, and there would be helicopters. But I was telling one of my friends earlier this week, I said, not to fuel any conspiracy theories or anything, but you couldn't make this situation any worse if you tried. There's literally, I don't think, any way that this situation could be worse. At every fork in the road where the government had to make decision A or B, they made the wrong decision. 100%. Like statistically, if I just gave you a blank, like like when you take the SAT, like the Scantron
Yeah.
if I gave you a blank answer sheet and you didn't even know what the test was on or what the questions were, I just told you to fill it out, you would get some of the questions right completely by accident.
Right. Yeah. Especially if if it gets right. Yeah, you
but
can't.
They have gotten 100% of everything wrong. Like that's even statistically improbable or impossible, or should be. But
now, I don't know what's factual out there right now, or what is just internet cannon fodder, if you will. But I know that there's some stuff out there, and folks, we're going to kind of do a hybrid show here. We initially were going to just go back into Go Bags, which may eventually turn this show into Go Bag Part 3, so we can actually dive into all of it. But some of this here there's been a lot of hearsay out there, and we'll probably do a little bit of information diving and and digging up as we're talking here. But some of the reports that I've heard, and I don't know if you're hearing the same thing. Obviously, you are out in Southern California. Now
Yeah.
you're in San Diego. These are happening in LA. So you're what? What is that? 4 hours? 3 hours?
No, it's in mileage. It's about 100 miles. So I mean, in drive time, it would be about an hour
Hour
and a half.
30.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, have you seen an influx of people leaving there and coming south to you? Or I mean,
No.
okay, so that doesn't happen. I mean, obviously you can't really go west. You can only go west so far. And if I remember correctly, the fires are coming from the east, right? They're coming east of the city, and
yeah, and I mean they are burning kind of along the coastal plain. So yeah, like you said, I mean you really couldn't go west of the fire unless you're going to get your feet wet, but in the ocean. But yeah, because there was 3 fires, and like in LA, like in old 80s movies and in the Point Break movies, you hear it referenced. Like they talk about, like there was that movie in the 80s called Valley Girl, and girls would talk like a Valley Girl. Oh my God, for sure. Like totally. And
right.
so that's the San Fernando Valley, is what that's in reference to. And like in Point Break, he tells him to go back to the valley, man.
Right.
So there was one fire that was in the valley, which is Pasadena, Altadena, that area. That was a separate fire. I think that one's called the Eaton Fire. And then the other fire was the Palisades Fire, which was down by the coast. That's what went through the Pacific Palisades, the entire community of Pacific Palisades, and then down into Malibu, and all the stuff, everything that burned in Malibu was like literally oceanfront.
Okay.
So and then the third fire was like up in the Hollywood Hills, and that one is the one that's like mostly put out.
Right. So that's the Hearst fire.
Yeah.
So there's the Hearst, the Eaton, and the Palisades. Hearst is 97% contained. Eaton is 35% contained. Palisades is 17% contained.
Oh, well, when I looked at it earlier, it was 18. So I guess they spread some more then, I guess.
Yeah. So they all started on the 7th of January.
Mm-hmm.
The acreage of the Hearst fire, the acreage that was covered by the Hearst fire is 799 acres. The Eaton fire was 14,117 acres, and the Palisades is 23,713 acres. So that's just obviously a little bit of data, and I'm going to dump a little bit more data. There was apparently 22,648 total emergency responses. That's probably all covering all of it. I don't know. Did you see the last coverage of fatalities?
So they've been saying all along that they don't really know, because even areas where the fire has kind of swept through and spread on, there, the ash and cinders and all that are still too hot to bring in dogs, because they said basically that's the only way they're going to be able to get a fairly confirmed fatality count, is to go through all the homes and stuff that were burned with like cadaver dogs. They, at the very beginning and for the first several days, it was only 5 confirmed, and then I think I heard last night they bumped the confirmed up to 15, but they are expecting that number to climb as recovery crews go into all these areas.
Okay.
And they've been saying that since day one, that like this is the confirmed count now, but we know it's gonna go higher.
Now, what worked against this? So, and folks, we talk about being prepared for natural disasters often. It's not the first time we've talked about this. We've talked about it when it comes to tornadoes. We've talked about it when it comes to flooding, hurricanes. Let's be clear that there is no way to be 100% prepared to not be impacted by this. Your most effective preparation comes what you do afterwards, right? Obviously, you've got a plan, and if that plan is to evacuate, then you do that. Like we don't have to be super tough guys here. Like you're gonna beat out a hurricane, and I'm gonna survive these fires. Like Go back to the firefighters from whatever that movie, that Only the Brave was, right? Like those firefighters that fought that, they were prepared to get through that fire with their whole bags and those emergency bags. They deploy them and they lay down in the dirt and they come out alive. Well, they came out as not alive. And so there's no way that you're going to get through this.
Well, yeah, and that was one of the points I was going to make as it pertained to bug out bags is you really, I think this is a hard thing for some people to do, but you really have to take a hard look and be realistic with yourself, because if I ask you, okay, you're building the survival kit, you're building this bug out bag, or you just want to be generally prepared for an emergency. And if I ask you, well, what are you preparing for? And your answer is, I'm going to be prepared for everything. Like I'm telling you it's not possible and it's not true, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So that's a good point to make, is if you're telling yourself you're going to be prepared for anything, kind of what you were just alluding to, like,
right. Well,
one
of the things
really
that
possible.
But one of the things that made this fire so devastating was the 45 to 70 mile per hour winds.
The winds were up to 100 miles an hour at
one point. Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Anybody who knows, well, I'm hoping that there's people out there that know this, but one of the quickest ways to get a fire, so in your fireplace, in your fire pit, I mean, I've been in situations where my fire has kind of died down, or camping and you've got nothing but coals left. One of the quickest ways to get that fire and those coals activated again is to blow on it, give it some wind. So that doesn't put the fire out, contrary to belief, like Superman's super breath doesn't put out a fire.
I made that joke this morning. My dad is a fireman. My dad was a fireman for 40 years. And
okay.
He texted me this morning. He's like, because the winds are forecast to kick back up today. And I said, well, it'll just blow the fire out like the candles on a birthday cake, right? I was being sarcastic, but yeah, right. You're correct.
So that doesn't, obviously that was one of the big things that made this fire so devastating.
So, but that was like a tip of the domino, because yes, the winds themselves do amplify the fire itself, and it is directly correlation for the fire to spread with those winds. But the other thing that it does is, when the winds get to a certain point, like I said, at one point they were 100 miles an hour, like all the firefighting aircraft, that's the number one asset for stopping the spread of these fires and putting them out as the aircraft drops. So at a certain point, the aircraft are going to be grounded, but then prior to it getting to the point where they're grounded, the drops just become ineffective, because as soon as they release the water and the fire retardant, it spreads to the winds, and it's no longer
it's not getting down to the fire.
Correct.
Right. So because obviously, going back to the Hawaii fire, and I don't know if we talked about this on the show or not.
I think we did.
Right. Like, why are we not dipping large buckets into the ocean and pulling them out? And that's the answer right there. Like, they can only do so much when you have those kind of winds happening. I mean, 100-mile-per-hour winds are like hurricane level winds.
Yes, that's
like
hurricane force winds. Yeah.
That's hurricane force winds. So you've got a hurricane and
I think that's category 2 hurricane force winds.
Yeah. And you've got a wildfire happening at the same time. Yeah. Talk about insane. Now, whatever, we're not going to get into global warming. And I mean, the fact that this is becoming a person's fault, I've seen that out there. It is the incoming president's fault and climate change. I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. But obviously they're trying to do that, and it's not happening. So the other thing that I have seen is the constant talk of them being started by an arson. Have you seen this?
So, one of my friends is where's he? He's a fireman in Los Angeles County. I'm trying to think of what part of the county he's in. I actually think he's in, I want to say maybe he's a fireman, like his fire station is in Malibu. Anyway, I was talking to him about I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's a guy I used to be in the Navy with, and he said that pretty much, like, he would say 100%. He's like pretty much 100%, if not 100%, then 99%. Um, of the fire calls we go out on, like the ones where there actually is fire, he said like 99 to 100% of them are homeless people starting fires in places where they shouldn't be. Like th- this maybe didn't make national news, but it was definitely a big news story out here. A big major freeway overpass burnt down last year, and it's because homeless people underneath the bridge started a cooking fire or whatever that got out of control and burnt down a major freeway overpass bridge. And so I heard this morning on the news that they're the term they're using for the fire is it was started due to human activity or something like that. I'll
Jesus.
have to see if I
Okay.
can say.
Yeah.
They're calling it human activity, but not necessarily arson, which, because I had that conversation with my fireman friend a couple of years ago, like to me that sounds like maybe it was homeless people. But again, that is the fault of the county and state government, the Los Angeles County
Right.
government, city government, and the state of California policies that have actually, no pun intended, stoked the flames of the homeless problem. That supposedly
Right.
in the last year, California spent, maybe it was either $2.4 billion or $24 billion or something on homelessness, and homelessness increased by 13%. So,
Jesus.
uh,
It's
but,
insane.
but the thing I heard this morning, they're not saying arson, but they're saying that they do believe the fire was started due to human factors or human activity or something. They had some politically correct term for it, but they're not calling it arson because I mean, and I guess that would be right because arson would be, I'm going over to Chris's house and I'm going to set your house on fire with you in it on purpose. But if I crawl under your porch and I light a fire to try to stay warm, and then it accidentally sets your porch on fire, that's not really
Right.
arson, I
Yeah,
guess.
I guess. So just think about that for a second. These fires started the 7th, right? That's 7 days ago.
Yeah.
7 days ago, and one of them, the smallest one, has been contained, but yet the one that is the largest is nowhere near it. I mean, 17% contained. Like that is still that is a bad situation.
Yes.
I don't know. Well, I don't know the weather out there right now. Are they still experiencing
So
those kind of
for
winds?
yeah, so for anybody that's not familiar, you can put this in your Google box a few times a year, and this is always one of the times per year um, that we get what's called Santa Ana winds. And so usually what that is if you can just picture in your mind, like when you were a kid in school, the picture of the United States that was up on the wall, right? You got the East Coast on the right side, the West Coast is on the left side, Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean. Well, everything in the northern hemisphere, including the water in your toilet bowl, goes in a counterclockwise motion, right?
Yeah.
So if you take that counterclockwise motion on the East Coast where the Atlantic Ocean is, that counterclockwise motion is bringing warm air up from the tropics. Well, if you take that same motion and put it over to the left side of the map, our counterclockwise motion is bringing the trade winds and cold air and everything down from the north. So typically, long story short, throughout the course of most of the year, we have winds that are coming off the ocean blowing onto the land. That's what the normal trade winds here do. They blow from the ocean onto the land. And so it keeps our weather nice and cool. But a few times a year, due to weather patterns and atmospheric pressure or whatever, the winds shift and the winds blow from the land towards the sea. Well, out here in the western part of the United States, what is just to the east of us is like Death Valley, Nevada, Arizona, very hot, dry climates. And so a couple times a year when we get that wind shift, it's called the Santa Ana winds, or people just call it Santa Anas. And so we get that, like, I have a weather station right over here, and I'm looking at it right now, and it's telling me that the temperature outside is 65 degrees, but the next thing down is the humidity.
Yeah.
And typically it'll tell me that the humidity outside is 22% or whatever.
Right.
But right now it just says LL, which means low. It means the humidity is so low it's not even registering on my weather station. So a couple times a year we get these Santa Anas, and we get that wind that's blowing from the land, basically from the desert towards the ocean, and the humidity becomes like 0%
Well,
humidity
yeah.
with these high winds and
Right. And that is one of the things that they kept reporting. So
Yep.
it was like a perfect storm.
Yep.
Of the high winds, the low humidity, and the just relentless drought conditions that California always seems to be in, created this catastrophic event of a wildfire that will probably continue to go on. I mean, going back to that, there's 17% contained. I mean, I'm sure that there are, I have not seen the reports, but I'm sure that there are some reports out there on when they expect to have this 99. There's nothing out there.
I've not heard anybody
Wow.
Put any sort of goal or hopeful in like we hope to have it contained by this time. I've not heard one single person even address that. But the other thing that you just said, though,
have they suspended air traffic?
Well, I can tell you. Hey, just give me 1 second and I can tell you. But one thing I did want to talk about that you just said that we're in drought conditions. We are actually not in drought conditions. 2024 saw record rainfall in Southern California, and as of right now, the aircraft are still making drops actively.
So no, making drops, but are they allowing flights to come into LAX like
that area? Sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So travel is still happening. I don't know the geographic location between these fires and like LAX and downtown Los Angeles.
But that's so yeah. LAX is south of southeast of where the fires are. So you said the word drought. We're actually not in a drought. 2024, okay. Southern California actually saw record amounts of rainfall in 2024. But therein lies one of the other problems is we had more than enough rainfall last year to refill all of our reservoirs and water reserves and all that kind of stuff. But the state government made these decisions based on these environmental these alleged environmental impacts, and instead of using that record amount of rainwater that we had to refill our reservoirs, they diverted all that what would have been surplus rainwater. They just diverted it all into the ocean. And now we need it and we don't have it, and we're not in a drought. So that's
wow. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. And it just goes to the why why did this happen? I mean, is it like just oh God, you just look at it like the timing of all of that. It's just so uncanny. But I guess to kind of bring this back, what does a go bag look like in this situation? I mean, does it differ from what a normal go bag would be? I mean, and before you answer the question, in one of your bags right now, do you have anything to combat or make you prepared for this kind of situation, like a fire situation, a wildfire situation where you get caught in it? I mean, what does that look like? Do you have a fire extinguisher anywhere in your in your kit?
No. The only thing that I guess that I would use specifically for if I was caught in a wildfire, because where this wildfire was concerned, in the first couple of days, people were attempting to evacuate by car, and we've talked about this before. All the streets and avenues and freeways and everything became completely gridlocked, and people just had to abandon their cars and evacuate on foot and leave all their cars clogging up the roads. And there's footage out there of a big Caterpillar bulldozer bulldozing like all these Audis and luxury cars like out of the way so that the fire vehicles can get through. Yeah. And there's a
that's interesting right there. Well, we'll come back to that, but go ahead. Yeah.
But if you're interested, there's a good video of this guy, and he's like, if you're abandoning your cars, leave your keys in them so we can move them because we're trying to get emergency vehicles through. And the
Yeah.
reporter's like, oh, sir, man, can I get your name? And he's like, yeah, my name is Steve
Steve
Gutenberg.
Gutenberg, right? Yeah. I saw
So,
that. That was great.
but there's footage of them like just going down the road with a Caterpillar dozer and just bulldozing all these Audis and BMWs and stuff out of the way. But the stuff in my kit that I guess because if you had like the foil like space blanket type emergency blankets, the ones if they're plastic, that's no good because it's gonna melt. But but if they're the foil type, that could provide a manner of protection from high heat. If you needed to run through a flame or an area that's really hot. But other than that, I've got safety glasses, the type that seals all the way around my eye. And a really good respirator dust mask, and then aside from that, signaling gear to signal for help. And that's
interesting. When we've talked about go bags and get home bags and inch bags on the last show, it was always kind of a different preparation, right? Like it was always preparing for some kind of event where we had to evacuate, whatever it may be, whatever the situation looks like. But I don't know that there is a go bag situation for these natural disasters, like, okay, flooding, like what's in that? I mean, I don't have do you have a set of flippers and a flotation device, but that goes to the, go ahead.
Just to, this is, I guess it's not realistic for anybody that's maybe outside the military because they're very expensive, but it's just like, I do happen to have several sets of them because they were issued to me over the course of my career and I never used them. But there's these little, they're about the size of this energy drink can. But they're made for if you're going like in a helicopter or an aircraft or a boat, anything that's over water and you're in like full, because there's you can get like tactical gear that has flotation built into it, and then you can have tactical gear that doesn't. So if you have the gear and the weapons and everything that doesn't, well, obviously your weapons don't have flotation built into them, but if you're wearing the type of tactical gear that doesn't have the flotation built into it, there's these little things that they issue us, and they issue it to you in a set. And it looks like a little pouch. Like I said, it's about the size of this energy drink can. And you're supposed to mount them basically on kind of like where your hip bones are, like your hips. And they have like these little beaded handles, and you pull each of them, and it basically creates this big thing of flotation around you. So if you lived in an area where you were really concerned about rising water or flooding or anything like that, you could put that as part of your go kit. But for a civilian to just buy those, they're very, very, very expensive. But
yeah, I mean, I just think it goes to the mindset of what you're doing here. Since our last call or since our last show about podcasts, like I've talked to, or about go bags on the podcast, I've talked to some friends. I'm like, what's your plan? And some of those people have told me, like, I got a buddy of mine who lives out in Montana, and he was like, no, we're bugging in. Mm-hmm. Like we're set up here to where we don't have to go. And
that's my plan as well, until a fire comes along that's fueled by 100-mile-an-hour winds, and
right.
There comes a situation where, like it or not, you have to leave, regardless of what you think your plan is. You must go now, or you become a roasted marshmallow.
Exactly. Like your bug-in plan is for civil unrest, and that's a great plan.
And that's a great point.
Right. That doesn't do shit for natural disaster, fire, whatever. And take the natural disaster out of it, right? Because water's rising is one thing. Like if water's rising in your house, okay, you can try and get up as high as you can. Maybe you can get through that. Fire is a whole separate beast. Fire is the destroyer of all. Like you're not getting through that. I mean, sure, water does just the same, right? And obviously wind does like a tornado comes through, but fire is really game over type situation. Like there's no getting to the roof of the spot that I live in if there's fire. Fire is going to go up. And more importantly than the fire is the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what kills you, right? Most times when you see all these burn victims, it's the smoke that gets them first. So in house fires, like that's it. So I think it's very important to understand what that looks like. And
Yep.
maybe it's just fortuitous that we've had these fires, we have a go bag conversation planned, and now we can talk about what that looks like in this situation.
And this gave me a good
Right on.
opportunity to have this discussion with my 13-year-old daughter. Like
Right.
if I ran up to your bedroom and banged on the door and I said, "We are leaving this house in 5 minutes and we're probably never coming back." Like, do you know, would you just stand there and run like a cat chasing your tail for 5 minutes? Or do
Right.
you have at least some kind of rough outline in your mind of, I need to grab this, I need to grab this, I need to grab this, I need to grab that? And then, you know, obviously if those 5 things that stand out in your mind, if you already had them pre-staged and ready to go, that, you know, then that's also going to help. And hey, guess what? Now you have a go bag.
Right. Right. Um, but going back to the point that you made, and this is something we talk about in all situations when it comes to bugging out. You think you are going to hop in your vehicle and drive away safely, like the team in Red Dawn. You're going to cut through the field and head off into the woods. If that field's on fire, you're not cutting through there. If
What
the
did you say this
road
was? You said
red
red
dawn,
duck, red Dawn. I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to have to
yeah,
watch that one.
yeah, watch that one. I don't think you've ever seen that movie. You're just you have to accept reality on reality's terms. There you go, Jamie. And understand that that's not it. Where that becomes very scary is, okay, fire moves fast, moves even faster when you've got 100-mile-per-hour winds behind it. You know, I don't think anybody's outrunning the fire. Um, I think that everyone needs to be real with that. And where I'm going with this is, if you're in an area that has wildfires or any of these natural disasters, be fucking smart, right? Like if they're telling you that evacuation is imminent, don't wait till they're knocking on your door to do it.
Right.
Be smart.
And
make your, go ahead.
And you can be smart, and maybe you are. Maybe you, the listener that's hearing my voice right now, maybe you're an incredibly intelligent person, but even so, your avenues of evacuation or whatever are going to be limited. Let's just the very basic. You turn out of your driveway, you got to go left or right, but you can be as smart as you want. You can be as prepared as you think you are. But your plan probably looks a lot like everybody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback on that, there is one way in and one way out of the place that I live. One road, in and out. That's great if you want to make sure nobody can get in here to do harm. But that is also very, very bad if that is your only way out of here. And if the bottom of this area is consumed by fire or overrun by water, which we saw in August, well, then what? What is your secondary plan? What is your contingency?
But even if it's not blocked off by something, that's still 200 other people's only way out. So
Exactly.
So yes, you're right. A, it could be blocked. B, there could be 199 other people trying to go that exact same way at the exact same time. So
right.
And but
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, probably not all of them, but I bet there are some people whose houses in Los Angeles have been reduced to ash, and it's probably some of those people that thought their bank accounts, somehow magically afford them some level of protection. But it's the things that you think can't happen, or the things that you think just won't happen. And when the Apollo 11, I'm sorry, not the Apollo 11, when the Apollo 1 astronauts died in the fire on the launch pad, and astronaut Ed White had to go and testify before Congress And he's like, we can point, this person can point at that person, the engineers can point at the manufacturers can point at NASA can point at this guy, we can say this guy flipped the wrong switch. He said at the end of the day, what caused this fire was that none of us we just thought it couldn't happen.
Right.
And
right.
so I think that snake bit a lot of people in Los Angeles. I think a lot of, again, I'm speaking for them, so maybe it's not all of them, or maybe it's not even a majority, but I would venture to say there's some people that now have nothing, that the fire completely wiped out their homes and their livelihoods, and they simply just thought it couldn't happen. That also, as much as it can, that needs to factor into your bug out plan or survival plan.
I mean, it does. And so going back to that whole situation, right? Okay, so we're talking fire, and we'll use this situation here where there's one way out. Now, behind where I live is quite a bit of wooded acreage. I mean, I don't know the exact, I'll probably have to get it, but it is definitely over, I would say that it is over 100 acres between here and the next road or area where I could get out to a civilization type situation. So immediately my plan goes from, okay, bug out bag 1, 2, and 3. So medical equipment, firearms, and shelter equipment loaded into my truck, grab the dog, and we're out driving down to, okay, shift gears, contingency plan, one large backpack with pieces from all 3 of those, out the back door, into the woods with the dog, and a little survival pack for the dog to carry some of their stuff. But that's it. That's it. That's what we're doing. So that your go bag situation has to be somewhat fluid, or based on a variety of those plans failing and you having to shift gears.
Well, it absolutely does need to be layered, and you just did a great description of it. Like, my plan A is I've got a vehicle, and therefore if I have a vehicle, I can have all this stuff. Okay, now we've reached an inflection point where now vehicle is now out of the equation for whatever reason, because you ran out of gas, because it became disabled, because the route is blocked, whatever. But now vehicle is no longer can no longer be part of the plan. So now I need to drop down to level 2, and level 2 is whatever. If there's 4 of us, there's me and my my imaginary wife and my 2 kids that I don't have. But let's just, it's you and it's you and your wife and 2 kids and a dog. Well, now, and all these other things have to factor in, like what kind of, are we running from a wildfire? Are we running from insurgents, Taliban ninjas that parachuted out of the sky? What's the, so that's gonna impact your decision on how you're going to divvy up the gear. Are you going to move tactically? Are you trying to move fast? And if you're trying to, now if we have to go on foot, we can't carry all this stuff. We have to carry what's in backpacks, but we need to move, because of whatever the situation is, we need to move as fast as we can, or we don't. We can take our time, but if we need to move as fast as we can, we got to layer this stuff down to make it lightweight, light enough that we can actually run with it. And so all these, your plan definitely needs to be layered, or it needs to be layerable, I should say. It needs to be scalable.
So when you went now over the past week, and so for all of you that are listening, and hopefully you still are, over the last week, since we recorded the bug out bag episode, you have gone on a mission to update your go bags.
Yeah, and just a quick recap, this is really all just really convenient, lucky timing, because just before Christmas, I saw the movie Homestead, which we talked about in the last podcast.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, I had an epic bug out bag that was ready to go, was very well thought out, well organized, well put together, ready to go, and somebody broke into my car and stole it. And so between the natural disaster in Western North Carolina, the move, what happens in the movie Homestead, and then just a week ago, these fires broke out just north of me, and I happened to have a week off work, so I finally decided this was the time that I needed to get off my butt and rebuild my bug out bag, to replace the one that got stolen. So yes, amongst all this other stuff, for the last 5 or 6 days, I have been knee deep in bug out bagness, and you have been the lucky recipient of some of the pictures of that madness.
Yes, I have. Now I'm going to ask you the most important question.
And the answer is yes.
No, it's not a yes or no question.
Shit.
How much money did you spend in the last week to put these bags together?
Do you want me to give you the long answer, the short answer, or just give you the number?
Just the short answer.
The short answer is I spent about, I think I spent about $250.
Okay. Now, that $250 was not everything for all of those bags, right?
No.
Right. You had stuff that
due to my 28 years in the military, I have copious amounts of, because like back in like World War II, and even post World War II into Korea and Vietnam and stuff like that, like the military had like military camping gear. Like there was the U.S. Army would issue you a government issue tent and a government issue sleeping bag. That's where the term GI comes from, or GI Joe. Was you didn't have Arc'teryx and North Face and Kelty and whatever. You had government issue. Well, now, because of our military procurement system, we don't really have, like, the government doesn't, there's not a factory in Toledo, Ohio cranking out government issue sleeping bags.
Right.
I get issued a Kelty sleeping bag, and I get issued Arc'teryx cold weather gear, and I get issued a Mystery Ranch backpack. And so over 28 years in the military, and the way the military procurement system is now, I have been issued over the course of 28 years a shit ton of actually pretty Gucci high quality, what was the word? Like kind of high end camping gear, survival gear, med gear. So actually, in kind of a funny way, that created a little bit of a problem, because, kind of in line with what we're talking about, when you're building a kit and you're telling yourself that this is an emergency kit, this is a bug out kit, this is a I'm leaving home kit, there's obviously going to be a part of me that, like, I want to take all this stuff.
Right.
But you can't.
So that's a very good point. Let me just jump in there for a second. Yep. And this is where the teacher would be like, you should write this down, folks. This is what you should take from this piece right here. You will not take everything that you want to take. You are literally grabbing essentials and leaving with what's most important. And, your fucking wine opener is not part of that. I mean, well, I mean, it may be, but like your wine opener is not part of that. Like a can opener, yes, but you don't need the wine key so you can open up your bottle of red. So let's be smart about this. So just a side note.
This is another thing that we have harped on about a million times over the course of all these podcasts that we've done. There is no substitute for experience and getting out there and getting training. Like, again, I always say I could load the contents of an REI store into a C-17 and parachute drop it to wherever you are. And if you don't have the training and experience, an entire REI store's worth of stuff is not really going to do you much good. One of the most valuable training exercises I ever did, it was when I first joined the Navy. It was my first year in the Navy. And I went to this little survival school up in Maine, because my first year in the Navy, I was stationed up in Maine. My first year in the Navy, I was stationed at a brand new command, and I was one of the first people to show up to this brand new command, and they didn't know what to do with me. They were like, well, you're a new guy, you're a junior guy. This command is brand new. We don't really have anything to do with you. So they just started sending me to schools. Like I got to go to schools for I got to go to this Naval Special Warfare photo intelligence course as like a brand new E3 in the Navy that's like not qualified to do anything, and they were teaching me how to take these like clandestine reconnaissance photos and stuff. And it was just because
Interesting.
they just needed to keep me busy. It was me. It was like there was me and these like 5 or 6 other guys that got to go to all these like random schools. Anyway, we got to go to this one survival school, and we got issued, like, we had to go to supply and get issued this kit. And it was like, they issued you a backpack, and then they issued you here's your sleeping bag, and they issued us an emergency bivy and 2 and there was like this whole list of shit that we had to have, like, that we were required to have to go to this school. And the first part of the school was classroom. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. This is how you survive. This is how you survive that. Here's this survival trick. This is how you catch a rabbit. This is how you gut a rabbit. This is the edible part of the rabbit. All this stuff. So there's a lot of it in the classroom. And then we actually went into the field portion, and this is the good part. This is where I was going to this whole story.
Okay.
At the very beginning of the field portion, and we had all of our kit. We had this whole backpack full of survival kit that we were required to have for the school. And the instructor gave us 5 minutes, I think. He said, everybody take all your gear off, throw it on the ground. So we all took everything off. He's like, you got 5 minutes to go through all your gear and pick the 10 things that you want to take. So he made us go through our gear, and we had to pick 10 out of all this crap that we had to pick 10 things. And he's like, all right. He's like, once you have your 10 things, set them off to the side. So we set our 10 things off to the side. And then like the other instructors came and took everything else. Everything that we didn't take as our 10 items, they took it.
Dude, that just made me really have an idea. Go ahead. When you get to that, I want
to. So now we've got our 10 items. Now the guy says, now you've got 2 minutes, and now the 10 items that you chose, now you have to choose only 5 out of that 10. So we picked 10 things. I'm sorry. We picked 5 things out of the 10, and they took everything else. So, and we had to survive the next 3 days with just those 5 items. And we were I think we were split into groups of 4, which, if we had known that up front, we might have made, like, hey, you take
better choices, right?
You make better, but we didn't know they were going to do that. So, but that was a great experience. That was a great learning experience. In having all this stuff and then basically having it all taken away from you, and you got to survive anyway.
So if anybody from the History Channel is listening to this, I've got an idea for a reality show. You just gave it to me. I mean, could you imagine how, like, if you went on the show alone and they're like, okay, bring all of your stuff. And then you get there and you're like, oh, all right, plot twist, empty it all out, pick 10.
Yep.
And now that's it. I mean, obviously Naked and Afraid, right? You get no clothes and no items, and you have to survive in this area. But okay, that's we went really sideways on that question of how much did you spend and what and what's important. But
the answer is, I spent $250, but the value of the shit in my pack is probably $1,000 or more. But
right. But where I'm going with that is, out of those things that you put in that bag, how much of it did you already have?
A lot.
Ready to go, right? Like, one of the things that you mentioned is, and I will go through my closet at times, and we'll get rid of stuff that we've never wore or whatever, right? Just donate it to Goodwill. Okay, I can take a shirt and a pair of pants and put that in a go bag as a thing. So if you're going through your closet and getting rid of stuff, get rid of it. I'm gonna be that guy for a second. And a decade ago, when I wanted to be the tactical Timmy that was going to SHOT Show in the Vertex pocket pants, I went out and bought myself the Oakley tan fucking combat boots, right? I mean, okay, great. I wore them maybe once, and I've never worn them since. They're literally sitting in the closet. But instead of throwing those out, they'll go in a bag for a situation where something like this is needed. I can't tell you how many things that are probably in this house that could get put in a bag that are useful for a go bag situation. So if you're going to venture on this go bag overhaul, which we will get into on the next episode of ZERT Go Bags, we're going to make a list and we're going to tell you to go through your house and see what you already have before you need to go out there and spend any money. Now, one of the things that I think is important, and as we wrap up today's show, it's going to be a talking point that I want to leave you guys with, because it's something that Jamie and I went back and forth with about based off of this subject. I said, okay, it's the go situation. You've got to go. How many firearms are you grabbing? And Jamie's response was 1 rifle and 1 pistol. I was like, that's interesting. I've got a 308 bolt action rifle with obviously for shooting out to distance. And I'm like, and I also want to kind of grab my AR and throw that in a case. And then I also want to bring my 22 to which, I know that I can hold and carry more ammo. Then obviously I've got my pistol, and then the rifle that I'm going to sling to myself when I'm leaving is my suppressed 300 blackout, because reasons. And he was like, okay, awkward. Basically, like, that's a lot of extra stuff. So, but it goes back to the point where you were just making, like, oh, I want to bring all of this. If I'm never coming home, I want to bring all of it. And that's kind of, I went down the rabbit hole of, okay, but then this rifle could be used for this, and this rifle could be used for this. And I don't know that that's necessarily here. Actually, let me just stop that. Somebody would tell me if I said that, well, you're not wrong. And being told you're not wrong is also in the same way being told, well, you're not right either. You can choose to do that, but is it the right choice? Now, that's the thought I want to leave you guys with on this episode. And we are going to make a part 3, because we are going to get into a full hour of go bags, get home bags, and inch bags. And I think it's important that that one includes pen and paper, so you guys can write down some of the important stuff that Jamie has to give on those subjects. So with that being said, thank you guys for listening to the show. This was literally a shift on the fly topic. We went into this show preparing to talk about building go bags, and the situation surrounding the fires in California seemed to take over. So we kind of went with it. And that's why I love this show. But until next time, you guys stay safe out there. Jamie?
No, so just if anybody wants to do a little bit of homework ahead of the next show, where we're going to talk about this in a little more granular detail, familiarize yourself with what's known as the 10 C's of survival. And your 4 priorities of survival, which, I've said this many times, but I was always trained that it was shelter, water, fire, food, in that order. And so to Chris's point about which guns to bring, well, that's really not a part of that list. And that's the way I view it, is like the firearms piece is kind of should be at the bottom of my priority, because hopefully I don't have to use them at all. But if I do, that's an extra layer. Security is an extra layer on top of all that stuff. So that's why, to me, it's I'm going to bring 1 pistol, 1 rifle. If I was going out on a combat mission in Afghanistan, that's what I would have. I'd have 1 rifle, 1 pistol. So I shouldn't need any more than that in San Diego, hopefully. But yeah. But that's it. That's all I got. This did turn into an interesting conversation, and like you said, that's what I like about this too. So we'll be ready to talk about go bags and survival kits next time. It's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart.
All right, guys. Until next time, don't be somebody's resupply. ZP002 out.